Your money is in danger. Prepare for the 2024 election. Usually you have your election, and then people believe rapid changes are going to take place, and the economy is going to take rapid turns very, very quickly, based on which person is elected president, as companies decide whether or not to hire based on which person became elected as president. I personally have found, ironically, the opposite to be true, that most of the uncertainty of an election actually happens before the election, and that by the time an election actually occurs, companies and people are able to make decisions about the future and what they believe is a more certain way. And unless we're already in a recession at that point, usually it's easier for companies to hire and to make decisions and to plan because they know, or at least they expect they know, what kind of administration they're going to be up against. So let me simplify that. And then let's talk about some strategies. So Alvin, quick note, I'm in Florida today. We've got Miami right now, Orlando and Tampa coming up. And then where we've got Boston, New York, Toronto, Chicago, Denver, a bunch more locations coming. Oh, Atlanta's in there as well. For our House Hack Roadshow, see House Sec. So if you haven't gotten yet to househack.com, click little investor tab and then press the come to our roadshow button to RSVP. Consider doing that. Okay, so to put that simply, that means I think the roughest time period to invest is actually going to be before the election, not afterwards. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand that there are a lot of politically divisive issues. And this video isn't about that. This video isn't about saying, oh, the stock market's gonna move, and if we get the same president or a different president or whatever, excuse me. Instead, what this video is that usually before the election, people are most fearful about what could be, whether you have the same president or a change of the guard, different presidents. And so usually, if you get more market tumble before the election rather than after, it makes sense for people to do something known as hedging. Hedging doesn't have to be like you're operating a hedge fund, although it can be. Some people will take advantage of complex strategies, like they will buy put options, they'll short stocks, they'll buy really out of the money. But all that stuff is very, very complicated for a lot of folks. And I think the simplest thing to think about between now and the election is, what can you do to make more money yourself? What can you do to set yourself up, not rely on anybody else to make you more money? What can you do to set yourself up to make sure you have more money? How are you providing more value to your community or to your employer to make sure that either you're getting paid more by providing more value, or you're providing more value in the hopes of getting paid more at some point in the future? I know a lot of times people feel like, oh, I'm working my ass off my job, and I feel like my boss doesn't recognize it, and that creates frustration. And in fact, that actually often turns into this sort of you owe me attitude, like I worked so hard for you, you owe me more money. The reality is generally the opposite is true. In America, we're sort of in this environment where you have to push yourself, as frustrating as it is to work harder and make more, and then if you're not recognized at the current place of employment, you have a current business or whatever, and then you take the skill set that you've grown and you go to another place where now you have more experience. You have more licenses, maybe you became a lender or a CPA, let's say you're doing bookkeeping now and you became a CPA, or you're working at a brokerage as an assistant, and then you go get your Series 7 or your 14. You're 24, you're 27. These are hard things to graduate up to. Or maybe you're a realtor as assistant today, and then you become a real estate agent, or you become an investment banker by getting your IPI license, which is, I think, one of those Series 7 days or whatever, or you go from paralegal to attorney by going to all of those are the level of things that let you make your own reality. And see, I'm a big fan of if it's meant to be, it'll happen. But I'm also a really big fan of if it's meant to be, it's up to me. So yeah, sometimes that just means, much like in video games, you got to put the frickin' grind in. Now the cool thing about video games is when you put the grind in, eventually you're gonna get to that new piece of armor or that new level, the experience bar grows. Life isn't as linear as that, but I personally have always treated it as if it was, and it's always ended up being true. I'm not saying that there aren't setbacks, people go through that, like I had massive setbacks as well. But how do you hedge going into uncertain times? Number one, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, cash, increase your income potential to make sure you're making as much money as possible. And one of the ways you do that is to provide more value. So for example, and then I'm going to get into portfolio construction as a financial advisor, but not as personalized financial advice. So I create educational content on the internet. It's all listed over at meetkevin.com, like an in-person event in June, or I've got, stocks and psychology of money course where we give buy, sell alerts for trading for people who like trading. But there are so many actual amazing money lessons in those courses, or 0 to millionaire real estate investing. Those that have coupon expiring this Tuesday, by the way, meetkevin.com. Michael, as always, how can I provide more value there? Give more value in my course. Remember, live streams give more value to the different types of people. Some people come to the lecture, sometimes for trailers, sometimes with a course mobilized. What can I do to make sure everybody's always getting more value? And that way, I'm providing more service. How can I continue to make more YouTube videos and provide more value? What can I do to make myself have the licenses that I need that I can expand my business and create stock brokerage or real estate company that I think will be the real estate company of real estate companies? Okay, very excited about it, obviously, which is good to have a passion for what you're doing as well. So providing more value, number one, is meant to be it's up to me. Number two, though, is cash. Increasing cash positions in a portfolio in uncertain times makes a lot of sense. A lot of people get frustrated by this idea because they think, oh, well, then I'm going to miss out on stock gains, this, that, or whatever. I've gone into a substantial cash position over the last about 2 months here. I really started at the beginning of about March. And so, for example, there are certain stocks or ETFs or whatever that, I've been very exposed to. And both those stocks or ETFs have basically transitioned into substantial cash positions. This is an advertisement for any kind of ETF. But for example, let's say an ETF happened to have a 40% cash position. There's a reason for that. There's a way that now that ETF is positioned to really buy the dip and minimize downside while hopefully trying to maximize upside. Now, yes, there is an element to that of timing the market. But when market signals are suggesting elevated levels of uncertainty that may continue, it makes sense to reduce your exposure to and from an all into a little bit more of a cash basis. That is one of the easiest ways to hedge. Something else that you can do is, let's say you had, I'll just make up a number here. Let's say you had $100,000 in a stock before, and now you have $5,000 in that stock. You might take another $5,000 and buy a 1-year call option or a 6-month call option on that. So that way, hopefully, if the stock moves rapidly and quickly, you don't sort of get left behind on gains because you're paying for that option to upside hedge yourself. Steve, sometimes hedging is just a matter of sitting on the sidelines and being ready to move in with cash. I'll give you an example here with Tesla. See, when Tesla earnings happened, there was a real risk that margins for that company would drop to somewhere around 14%. There was a real risk and possibility of that, and that would have taken that stock from where it was at the time of earnings, about 140, probably down to 120 or down to 1-to-1. That's very risky. So it's almost better to have been unexposed for earnings, been proven that, okay, we have avoided the worst case potential and then move back in without missing out on any potential gains, while also potentially taking advantage of it. That's one of the benefits of potentially going a little bit to cash for a 30-day period, especially in uncertain times, setting yourself up if you have some tax losses to take advantage of some for the rest of the year, since I personally think when most people do it in December or November, the market could actually be a little bit more euphoric and you might not have as much of an opportunity. That's just my belief. I could be totally wrong. But let's think about this in summation here. Number one, increase your cash income in uncertain times. Number two, think of the election as usually a turning point that actually removes uncertainty rather than creates more uncertainty. Before the election, you have the uncertainty of both presidencies. After the election, you only have the uncertainty of one presidency. Then consider in a portfolio if you're worried about things running away to the upside, look into and educate yourself about call options. And to avoid some downside, potentially just consider increasing your allocation to cash. You can always buy back in. That's one of the beautiful things about stocks, and you don't have to go all the way back in, especially in uncertain times. Look, the good news is I think this week we got pretty dang good earnings from companies. Does that mean all sorts of uncertainties are gone? No, absolutely not. Are there still going to be fantastic opportunities to invest in the long run? Absolutely. But if your future is going to be affected, your ability to buy a house or to build a business or just pay your bills is going to be affected because you're all in on, let's say, the stock market and you're not properly hedged going into uncertain times, then maybe this video is for you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.